You're listening to Packers Talk Network.
PackersTalk.com.
Welcome to a special edition of the Packers Weekly Podcast, part of PackersTalk.com network. I'm your host, Miles Teddick, joined by your co-host, Tim Hamilton. We're diehard Packers fans. We love talking about the Pack. We're not getting into all the national sports media headlines, talking points, and nonsense that they waste their time with. We are sticking to football, sticking with the Packers, diving in the top topics every week, breaking down games during the season and sorting through all the drama and the rumors of the offseason. And now we're in it with the draft and all this fun stuff right now. Do not loop. That'll work. Turn that off. Okay, good deal. If y'all want to support the podcast, please spike that like button for us. Follow us on all the socials. Subscribe to the Packers Talk YouTube channel. All those things help us out quite a bit. Don't take you much effort. Don't take you much time. And before we get started, a few words from our sponsor, Wisconsin's own Ticket King. For over 30 years, Ticket King has been providing Packers tickets to Packers fans. You can find them on the web at theticketking.com or visit their locations in Green Bay and Milwaukee. For direct links to specific Packers game tickets, go to packerstalk.com/tickets or browse their website at theticketking.com. Tim, how is this draft treating you so far, sir?
It's been fun.
Right? Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I think there's been some surprises, but I think a lot of it is guys that we've talked about. They're Packer guys, and Gute's sticking to his board, and I think they're doing a lot of good work tonight. Over the last 2 days, Thursday and Friday. Now that we are getting through the first 3 rounds of it here Friday night. Yeah, I think it's been a lot of fun and a lot of interesting new Packers on board now.
No doubt about it, man. In my opinion, the Super Bowl window is wide open. Wide open. Kick that bad boy open. Gute is in the kitchen cooking with the team right now. I'm sitting back, relaxing, enjoying it. I've got to say, everybody that had their hopes up for Cooper DeJean, it looked like he was making a play for him. The Eagles did what they did. I mean, we've got a GM who is just ready for everything. He's just like, cool, they took him. Guess what? We're still going to get a player that we love. Absolutely love it.
Yeah, I do too. And I think if they really wanted them, wouldn't you have taken them in the first round?
Yeah, I mean, and that's why the biggest thing for me, it's like everybody wanted him in the first round. Well, no other team wanted him in the first round, and no other team wanted him at the beginning of the second round either. So
exactly, which makes me think maybe the Packers liked him, but they weren't. He was in a group of guys probably that they liked, and not at the top of their list. So they know a lot more than we do, and I think a lot of Packer fans fell in love with Cooper DeJean. He was their draft crush, or he was just mocked so many times to the Packers that everybody knew his name. And that's why it was kind of like a letdown that they passed on him in the first round, and then that the Eagles jumped up right before them and took him in the second round. But not sure how high he was on the Packers board. We'll never know that true answer, but it kind of shows you that they took Jordan Morgan over him. They also took Jordan Morgan over Graham Barton, who was another guy who was mocked to the Packers a lot in the first round. And then in the second round, the Eagles jumped them. I don't think it really had much bearing on what the Packers then did, which was trade down a little bit.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I know we're all familiar with DeJean because, like I said, he was mocked so many different times and by different people to the Packers. Everybody was familiar with him, but I'm fine with it. I'm not that disappointed that they didn't get him. I'm not saying he's not going to be a good player. I think he probably will be a pretty decent player, but he went in the second round, not in the first round. And a lot of teams passed on him. And I think the Packers ended up with good football players. I like their process. I like, the trade back, I thought in the second round was pretty good. I think they let the board come to them. The first 2 rounds, especially the first 2 picks, the first, at 25 and 41, guys were falling, we weren't expecting that. So the guys were falling to him, and they kind of let it come to them. And then even with the trade down, I know there's a lot of people, Packer fans on Twitter saying, trade up for 41. I just thought,
Yeah.
why? Like it's
Let it
fallen to
fall to
them.
him. Yep.
Yeah. So he traded back and he got extra picks, and we'll see what he does with those extra picks. I think there's still more movement to come, but um, yeah, I'm really happy so far with what they've done. How about you? Is there like anything that sticks out to you? Like, or you like what they did? Are there guys or positions that they haven't hit on yet that you wish they would have?
Um, I think it's interesting how it all fell. I think the one big swing and miss that I had, that anybody who's been listening to us, consistently was, A.D. Mitchell, and he did end up going to the Colts. I really thought with his freakish athleticism that would be tough to pass up. The thing is, you don't know what goes on in these interviews. You don't know what happened when the Packers met the person and if they like him or not. And so, yeah, that was a big, we were kind of wrong about that, or I was wrong about that. I can't say I'm disappointed that they haven't found that they haven't taken a receiver yet. I'm definitely not. I thought that it was intriguing, the idea of getting kind of a freakish guy who you shouldn't probably have the opportunity to take. That didn't happen. Brian Thomas Jr., that was one we were kind of toying around with. That didn't happen. No, at this point, I love the way they've handled it. I love the way that he's let the draft come to him. Jordan Morgan was one of the first players we talked about when we started doing our player breakdowns. I called him a Gute guy. He seemed like a guy who could shift into the interior. And so, here we are. And that, I'm not calling myself an expert, or this show kind of, we're not experts. We're just sitting here having some fun, but we are trying to find these things that make sense. And, lo and behold, you add a few things together, and it's not too hard to find the ones that make sense. So if I really like the pick with Jordan Morgan. I think that's an excellent pick. I think that, you've seen reports now of other GMs that had plans of taking him if he was still available. So it's kind of the inverse of the DeJean situation, where it's like, oh, you could have waited. No, probably not. My colors are changing on me back there. Probably not. He looked like he was probably going to be gone. So I think it does end up being a great pick. And, this draft, once again, it proves, like, we all sit here, we do this, we watch the YouTube clips. Some people are paying for some, access to other information and film and all that. But at the end of the day, these teams, Gute and his team, they're doing this year round, man. They start next month working on next year's class. And so they've watched more film than you, and they've got a better, framework for how to evaluate these guys than you do. So, to come out and say, well, I had them graded this way, it's like, let it go. Let that go. Because when you look at this draft and the way that it unfolded, how many mock drafts had 6 quarterbacks coming off the board? Who had Penix going to the Falcons? And, that's where I'm just like, just let it all happen. It's fun to watch. I think that the way they're handling it is excellent. You see the consistency in it now, and I think consistency is something that's very important too. It can be tempting to go outside of your frameworks here and there, and I think we've talked about it. It's paid off for them when they stick to it. It hasn't necessarily paid to stray. They've hit a few times here, Jaden Reed specifically. But let's go to the comments real quick. Toss up here to Jason. I hope I don't mess that up. Botchko. We'll call it that. Appreciate you for commenting, Jason. He likes the depth at linebacker. Hard not to. Definitely love the depth at linebacker that's building up. And he also thinks that Gute's hitting on this draft. Yeah, we agree. It's great. I love what he did with Cooper there. How you trade back, you don't get the safety you want. You trade back a few spots. I gotta believe when they traded back like 4 spots. That Cooper was one of those, Edgerrin Cooper was one of those guys that are like, look, we already lost DeJean. He should be there, or maybe 2 or 3 others should be there 4 spots back. Let's pick up 2 other players. And the thing is, you can't discount him picking up a 5th and a 6th round, pick, because that's Dontavian Wicks and Carl Brooks. You know what I mean?
Right.
So we can't really be mad about that. I will say I hope he packages those up and maybe moves around a little bit, but
Agreed.
yeah, I love the way it's going so far, man.
Yeah,
Absolutely
I do
love it.
too. I think they're taking athletes. I think they're taking guys that are Packers guys based on, all the athletic measurables that they like, size measurables that they like. Yeah, and they're filling needs and filling holes on the roster. So I'm really happy with it. I think the only positions where I could kind of say like I'm a little concerned about is cornerback. They haven't taken a corner. And I want to see more offensive linemen, but I think we're going to see that on Saturday on the third day of the draft with more offensive linemen. But yeah, I mean, what they're doing makes a lot of sense. I think starting with Jordan Morgan, like we had talked about him early on, he's as much a Packers guy as any offensive lineman in this draft really was, or at least any realistic option at 25 was. And I thought maybe
Right.
41, he would be a really good fit. The fact they got him at 25, I'm fine with that. And there were probably teams that wanted him that, he wasn't going to make it to 41. So
Yeah.
I'm fine with where they took him. I like him a lot. And I think part of maybe the initial Packers feedback from the fans was a little bit of disappointment that they took an interior offensive lineman, a guy who was going to be a guard. And I think we need to really tap the brakes on that because I think he's going to be a tackle. I think he's at least to start, he's going to be a tackle. And maybe
Yeah.
if he doesn't work out there, they'll kick him inside. But I don't think they view him as like we're drafting a guard here. They
Right.
view him as a tackle and a tackle with versatility, which is what they love. And now you have him, you have Elton Jenkins, you have Zach Tom, who are guys that they view as being able to play multiple positions for them, and that's how they want their offensive lineman to be. So he fits in with the mold. And anybody that's just automatically assuming he's a guard, he's a guard, he's a guard, I don't agree with that. I think he's a tackle. And if he proves he's not and they have to move him to guard, fine. Then maybe that's a different conversation, like, taking an interior offensive lineman in the first round. But I think he's a tackle to start with. He's a really good athlete. He's now going to be another year removed from a torn ACL. And I think that'll help him build his strength that maybe he wasn't able to do going into 2023 because he was rehabbing off of that ACL injury from November of 22. So now you can build up your strength, which is one of the, weak points of his profile of his game is that he needs to build strength. So he can build that up. But I think in a lot of ways, he's very much a Packers type of offensive lineman. And the big knock being he's got shorter arms. Well, 32 and 7/8 inch arms. I mean, Balaga was 32 and a quarter. That's not that much of a difference. And I saw it out there that Chad Clifton was 33 inches. Like, didn't affect him in any way.
I mean,
So,
with those kinds of things, I kind of draw it back to the argument that I made for Cam Kitchens. It's like, okay, if a guy's got short arms, let's go to the film and show me where his short arms cost him. And for a guy
right.
who didn't lose a single one-on-one rep at the Senior Bowl, that's a pretty big deal. So to be like, yeah, but he's got short arms, like, oh, okay. I mean, but I just watched him compete against all of his, the top peers in his class, and he didn't lose to any of them. So that's a big deal. Here Eric Anderson disagreeing with us a little bit. That's cool. Cooper is a good pick. The rest of the draft, kind of a miss. Fair enough, man. Looks like you
I
served.
disagree.
Appreciate you for your service.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I don't think it was a miss. I really think that they've hit on everything so far. And, we can get nitpicky about what Jordan Morgan is, but let's go back to what Gute said. And he talks about the best five. I think the reason you take Jordan Morgan there is because you believe he's one of your best five. So leave that up to them. They'll figure it out. But they're already dropping clues. Well, that Zach Tom would be a hell of a center, wouldn't he? It's just like that makes a little bit more sense. And I think the one thing to me, and I could be wrong about this, but if we're looking at all these pieces and analyzing them, Rasheed Walker to me seems like the least versatile. Like that guy seems like he's a left tackle, and that's where he's gonna be. And maybe you could make him go out to right tackle. I don't see him going inside,
No,
but
he's not there.
the athleticism of Jordan Morgan is something that has been brought up And that actually is a huge asset for the guards, especially in an offense like this where they like to do a lot of that horizontal movement. And if you can get a guard who's got the athleticism to pull effectively, you can have some fun. Not to take shots at previous guards of the Packers. Elton Jenkins, I think, is a great example. Man's a fantastic athlete, and he's an example of what you can do when you have an athlete in that spot. Imagine being able to have an athlete opposite of him, because you haven't had as much of that at the right guard position. There's been a little bit more girth at that one. So, yeah, very, very excited, I think. All around, we could get into Javon Bullard, too. Jason says Bullard, though. That's nasty. I agree.
Absolutely.
The video of him getting the call and then letting his family know that he's an effing Packer is, gosh, dude, that just makes me want to run through a wall. But, yeah, so, I mean, overall, we've – go ahead, Tim.
No, I was just going to say about Bullard, like, he's very similar measurement-wise and athletic-wise to what Darnell Savage was, but different kind of player. He's more of a nastier, more physical player, and I think he's going to bring an attitude to the defense. I think he's much more of a willing hitter and tackler than Savage was, and hopefully a better tackler than what Savage was. But their measurables are very similar, and I think that's why he kind of fits the profile of being a Packers kind of pick there. And so that wasn't surprising. So, yeah, and his ability, and they said it, in the post-draft press conference, was that he can play the slot, and I think they view him as interchangeable with what they can get with McKinney, but also the fact that he's going to be able to play some slot reps, and they're going to be able to mix and match what they do with the defense, and that just gives them tons of ability and versatility in the secondary, which is great. And yeah, Bullard's a cool pick. I think he's going to bring an attitude to the defense, and that's something they've, many things they've been lacking on defense. That's one of them. And the ability of Hafley to use them in different areas and be interchangeable with Xavier McKinney. And going back to like what Gute's been saying since they signed McKinney, they want interchangeable safeties. They want interchangeable parts. They want a safety who can do different things, including cover the slot, play deep, play up. And Bullard gives you that ability. And now you, from a schematic standpoint, like what they can do with McKinney, because he can play all kinds of different roles all over the defense. Bullard potentially can do that. Then you have a true slot in Nixon. You have two linebackers now in Cooper and Quay Walker that can do a lot of different things. They bring a lot of athleticism and speed to the defense. Like, Hafley's got some toys to play with now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And the key word I think here across the board is versatility. They want pieces that can move around. They understand how common injuries are. And the best way to brace yourself for injuries is to have guys who can move and fill in gaps when they happen unexpectedly. So you take a guy who, is he a safety? Could he be a corner if you need him to? Yes and yes. Great. Let's see what happens, and I think that's the best way to do it. You've got a lot of great athletes and just great football players that are coming out into the NFL. Don't get caught up in definitions, I mean, let's have a fun reminder about what happens when you do that. The Cowboys passed on TJ Watt for Taco Charlton because Taco Charlton was a better fit for their scheme. Okay, let's not overthink this here. So you just take good football players and you find places for them to play. And I think that's what they're doing right now. I love the way that it seems like they've got a plan B and a plan C, and when this happens, we're going to do that, and they don't seem to be missing a beat. So it's fun right now. It's fun to sit back and just trust that the GM is working, is cooking, as the youths would say. Let's see here. We got Clint Stoner down here. Clint, how are you, sir? Packers owner here. I think great draft so far. Can't wait till tomorrow. Tomorrow should be fun. I think what's interesting about this is, one, we got a ton of picks. You got 8 picks tomorrow, I believe, right? But 2, I think it's easy for most fans to tune out this part of the draft and just sort of hope for the best, and we'll figure out, we'll see who they picked later. But after the last couple of years of how Gute's done on day 3, I mean, Packers fans, tune in. This is where some
Mm-hmm.
significant players have been coming from.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for tomorrow as well. I think that you're going to see some action. My goodness, if he actually drafts 8 players, that's going to be interesting in itself.
Expect some movement tomorrow. I think he's going to be moving around tomorrow.
Yeah, gotta be. I gotta believe that's true. We've given some reactions here to Jordan Morgan. Overall, happy with the pick. Do you have a grade for it, Tim?
Incomplete.
Incomplete. Yes.
All of them will be
All of them
incomplete. I don't like
incomplete.
draft grades, but
I don't either.
I really like the play. I really like the pick. It makes a lot of sense to me. He fits the profile of what they like in offensive linemen. Yeah, and we've talked, in the weeks leading up to the draft, like what would make me happy, what did I want to see them do, and I've said stock up on offensive linemen, take 3 of them. Well,
Yeah.
I'm not going to complain when they take one in the first round, and I expect them to take more on Saturday. So I really like the pick. I think he's got the ability to be a really solid left tackle for him. And if he doesn't stick at left tackle, I think they can move him the guard. But I would start him at left tackle. That's where I expect him to be as a tackle. Whether or not he starts from day one, I don't know. I think Rasheed Walker, showed a lot of promise, the latter part of last season. So we'll see. It'll be a good competition. They'll figure out the best 5, but yeah, I like the Morgan pick. I like the upside of it. I think he's got ability. If he doesn't start right away, I think he's going to be pushing Rasheed Walker for his job.
Yeah, and that's where it comes down to the best 5. Whoever the best 5 are, they'll figure it out. They'll have it figured out probably before training camp, if I had to guess. It might take training camp to work out a few of them, though.
That's fine.
But yeah, I mean, overall for me, Jordan Morgan, I think that he is one of their best 5. Just as they stand right now. How he fits in there, I think there's a couple ways that could happen. I would not rule out him finding a home at right guard, but certainly agree with you as far as his skill set and just where do you want what skill sets and those types of things. I definitely would love to see him compete at that left tackle spot, but would not be surprised if his best way to be in the best 5 early on is through a different position. So we'll see about that. But either way, love the pick. Absolutely love the pick. Let's see what some other folks have said. Jason says that Morgan's a solid pick. Coached up, believe he'll be even better. Yeah, I mean, that's the idea too, right? Is you hope that these guys have their best football ahead of them. You hope that you get some raw talent here, you get some professional coaching on that, and these guys take another step. So absolutely love it, and I think they've got some stuff to build on there.
Yeah, I just think hitting the weight room and being another year removed from the ACL surgery is going to help him a lot with some of the strength issues that he's had. That's one of the knocks on him is he needs to get stronger. Well, he tore his ACL in November of 2022, or else he was coming out in the draft last year. So he stayed in school for a year, but he was rehabbing and made it back pretty quickly to start the season. So, yeah, another year out of that, getting in an NFL strength and conditioning program should help his development right there. And I think the other thing to point out, too, is a lot of people were expecting Graham Barton for the Packers. He was mocked in a ton of mock drafts, and they passed on him.
Up there with DeJean.
Yeah, and I think it tells you that the Packers, maybe they like Barton, but I think it tells you that the Packers, one, they obviously like Morgan more if they took him over him, but right. I think they feel like Morgan probably can play left tackle, and maybe they don't think that about Barton. He's probably a guard or a center, and I think the Bucs who took him are expecting him to be their center, but so they went with a guy who they think can play tackle for him, which to me says a lot.
Yeah, I agree. There is a bit of a Y in the road there. Is this guy, the primary value inside or outside? And then you can figure out which side that is, right or left. But, yeah, I agree that that's probably what it came down to. And you just have a higher value on those guys that you believe can actually play left tackle for you. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are our Morgan reactions. We overall love the pick, very happy with it. Edgerrin Cooper, I mean, my goodness, I'll probably overreact to this. I absolutely love this pick. This pick. So for me, if there, as a fan, if I have like a, kind of maybe not a blind spot, but just like I know that I've sort of overreacted to this, I have not been able to get over how much the Buccaneers linebackers whooped our butts in the NFC Championship game. Devin White, it was Devin White and what was the other one?
Levante David.
Levante David, yeah, those they were just
Yeah.
monsters, man, and they were athletic all over the field. Just a nightmare for an offense to try to work around. And then I'm also still scarred by the 49ers linebackers of, what is that, 10 to 12 years ago at this point. Patrick Willis and Navarro Bowman, just monstrous linebackers. I haven't been alive all that long, right? So I can't say they're the best linebacker tandem in history, but my goodness, they've got to be in the conversation like that. Those two together, and that was only a short period of time where you actually got them together. It was just impossible to play against. I want that, and I think that Edgerrin Cooper and Quay Walker have potential to be that. Both just athletic monsters. Both play mean with bad attitudes. Quay's got his in check a little bit, which is good. He's working on that. But very, very excited about this pick. What do you think, man?
Yeah, and you talk about the 49ers. What about Dre Greenlaw and Fred Warner right now?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And what Baltimore had last season with Roquan Smith and Patrick Queen. Like now the Packers hopefully have their own version of that. Yeah, I mean, we talked about Edgerrin Cooper a lot when we talked about the linebackers.
Yep.
Really liked them. Very productive. He's only about 230 pounds, but linebackers aren't that big anymore in the NFL. But I think he's got like 34-inch arms, which is kind of incredible for a 230-pound linebacker. You don't see that. I mean, he's got longer arms than our first-round left tackle. And they blitzed him a lot last season at Texas A&M, and he was highly productive as a blitzer. Go back and watch him against Alabama. He was incredible in that game. I think, he can go sideline to sideline. He's a playmaker. He's all over the field. He's kind of what you want Quay Walker to be, and hopefully that's what Quay Walker turns into. And I think Quay's got to get better on his own, but I think he was held back by the system that he was in previously, and hopefully Hafley's system can unlock that potential. But to have Quay Walker, Edgerrin Cooper next to each other, I mean, that's a ton of athletic ability.
Yeah.
A lot of speed there, guys that can cover a lot of ground. So, yeah, I mean, the pick made a lot of sense. I mean, when you saw his athletic testing numbers that are through the roof, his measurables, his production on the field, he played for an SEC program. It made a lot of sense for the Packers. So, that was kind of almost like and I think Jordan Morgan too. Jordan Morgan and Edgerrin Cooper, very, very much Packers picks that made a ton of sense. So to have Quay Walker and Cooper next to each other, they're gonna cover ground there in the middle of the field, and we got really, really good athletes on the second level. So,
absolutely,
yeah. I mean, the fit for Hafley's defense should be incredible for both of them. That's what the expectation and the hopes are. But yeah, I like Cooper a lot as a player. I think he's a playmaker. I think he can do a lot of different things, whether it's in coverage, whether it's blitzing them, like he showed last season in college. So yeah, him and Quay next to each other, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch, and hopefully they can unlock the athletic ability that both of them possess.
Well, and we've already seen Quay Walker's athletic ability on display, and I've pointed it out a few times where you just see him make plays where you're like, dang, in the past a Packers linebacker did not make that play. So he's already demonstrated that, and his growth is going to continue, and he's going to be kind of a mentor, I would imagine, to Edgerrin Cooper. But this to me is very exciting. I think it's nice to see them kind of investing, I think, proportionally right now as far as the offense and the defense goes, right? The defense needs a little bit more attention. You're changing schemes. You got a new defensive leader in there. You have seen a couple of bodies leave as well. So that's the side that needs the care. You can't overlook the offense, though, and if there is any position of need on the offense, it would be the O line. So I love the way they've balanced it all out, and the way they're addressing these things. But they also are. It's just this constant look at the future. Like now that you've got these guys like Edgerrin Cooper, and he's 3 years behind Quay Walker. It's just this constant feed of talent, which is where it kind of leads me to like tomorrow. I'm excited because it's like, okay, invest in more in O-line, invest in like the next generation, even though the main, core of this team, they're still on their rookie contracts. And I got a little bit, off point there from Edgerrin Cooper, but just very excited about the way that this is all unfolding so far, and excited about the potential there of Cooper and Quay Walker. So let's see here. Jason's got a comment. Didn't get Cooper DeJean. We did not. We did get a Cooper, right? So I guess that's sort of the theme of the night. Like, we didn't get the Cooper that everybody wanted, but we got a Cooper. All right, he might be even a better Cooper. We're gonna find out. So I'm, very, very excited about this pick. One of my best friends is an Aggie, so he was kind of in my ear on this one. But very, very excited to see just the attitude, the athleticism, those types of things. This is something that has been kind of a knock on the Packers defense, and I think it was Mike Daniels this last season that started bringing it up as far as how other teams perceive the Packers defense as kind of soft. They're not bringing that attitude. And, the guys that they got tonight, man, and even some of the guys that they'd already brought in the last couple of years, they got attitude. So I'm excited to see that. And then let's see here. Clint says, agree, Morgan's tackle hasn't grown into his man body yet. Hey, that you got to take some time. Guarantee we'll find a home somewhere on the line. He's a big man, take some time to grow into that man body. But yeah, you're right. These guys still have some developing to do. I think, really for me, and I take this from McCarthy's era, but that year from 1 to 2, that jump that these guys can make, and primarily for me, what it comes from is them having a full off season of being a professional football player, right? Even these guys who are getting drafted right now, they're on high. You got to kind of like round up your school stuff. Some of them do. You got to kind of change your life still to get yourself into mini camp and then OTAs, and then you're sort of learning on the fly. And all of a sudden, before you know it, training camp's here, and you're still a rookie. It's just kind of a whirlwind, and you don't really get a full off season to be a pro as a rookie. But yeah, that first full off season as a pro, I feel like things can slow down for you. You can also be a little bit more meaningful about your off-season training. You're not training for a 40 anymore, right? There's no more of this combine stuff. So yeah, I get more excited about the jump from year 1 to 2 there than I do about what instant impact these guys can make. But attitude, man, attitude shows up day one. So that's why I get excited about these guys' attitude. But speaking of attitude, Javon Bullard, the next pick that they made, I love this pick, man. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm with you. He plays with an attitude. He plays physical, plays attacking, covers a lot of ground. He played a lot of slot in 2022, and then 2023 was more of a safety, but he gives you that versatility, and it sounds like from what the assistant director of college scouting, Patrick Moore, I believe is his name, he talked about both of the second-round picks after they were made. Sounds like they're going to use that versatility. He's going to play some nickel for him. He's going to play some safety. They're going to make him interchangeable with Xavier McKinney. But yeah, he brings an edge and a feistiness to the defense. And I think that's a lot of Packer fans are going to be really happy to see him out on the field because he kind of gives you that attitude, almost like Keyshawn Nixon too. It brings it as well. So yeah, I think if you just look at his size and his measurables, very similar to Savage, but they're different players. I don't want to scare anybody because of, Savage was a disappointment, but different kind of players. And I think you're playing in a different scheme. And he's got Xavier McKinney, who's going to be on the field with him to, kind of cover up some of the rough spots there. Savage didn't always have that, but I'm happy with Bullard. It makes a lot of sense. He's a really good athlete. He's got versatility, which is, kind of a theme with them. Jordan Morgan is versatile. I think Cooper's got versatility. So, now with Bullard too as well. So yeah, I'm really excited for Bullard. I think he fits a lot with a Packer kind of pick from what they look like from an athletic standpoint and on the field standpoint. And of course, he's a Georgia Bulldog from, defensive Georgia Bulldog, which they love.
He's a dog.
Yep.
Yeah, Clint Stoner pointing out, love it, another Georgia dog with attitude. But speaking of a dog, he's not just one of those guys. He was the MVP of the national championship game for the 22 Georgia national champions. That's a dog right there. Like, that's not just a guy. We're not dealing with the Jag. I guess as long as we're getting familiar with all of our terms. He is certainly not just a guy. You're not the MVP of a national championship game without being a certain type of dude. Showing up in the biggest moments. Some people don't show up in the biggest moments. That's another one. Edgerrin Cooper. One of the things that stood out to me when we were doing our draft prospect reviews with Edgerrin Cooper is his best games were like the most meaningful games. Alabama and like the bowl games. He showed up when it was time to show up. Whereas some of these other guys, you'll see they'll have like a good PFF grade because they beat up on the Sisters of the Poor twice. And it's like, okay, well, but the rest of the season looked like kind of like a turd. So, you really have to get in there and figure out like who these guys are. And obviously, we're just sitting here doing it as fans from our computers. But these GMs do that. They figure out who they are. And I don't think there's any coincidence that Gute has a thing for these Georgia Dog national champions. Now he's got 4 of them on his defense. So I love it. I think it's a great pick. I love the attitude. He's not one we talked a lot about in our reviews. I think that it was easy to overlook this guy, not because he's not good, but more because it's just like you look at the name, the pedigree, the accomplishments, and all of that. And you're like, yeah, he's one of the top safeties in the draft. Like you almost don't need to analyze more than that. Like, yep, he's one of the better ones. Like, no need to talk more about it or, have a creative take. Don't overthink it is kind of what this one came down to for me. It's like the guy is accomplished. He's got the attitude. He's got the athleticism. Again, don't overthink it. So I love it. Love the pick. It's hard. I think this is a hard one to beat, really. And I liked Cam Kitchens, who did get taken. I think was it by the Rams?
Yeah, I think so. Right at the end of the 3rd round.
Right. So I was rooting for that one. I think Jaden Hicks is one that still is he still out there? I know that was sort of
so.
That was another favorite of Packers Twitter. Let's see here. Let's take a look while we're talking about this before we move on to our next reactions. Let's skip ahead to who's left here. Let's have some fun. Talk about who's left. Going out to safeties now. Because we missed out on DeJean, and I know people are not happy about that.
Yeah, Hicks is definitely still out there. He hasn't been picked.
Cole Bishop was taken.
Cole Bishop was taken by Buffalo. Katan Oladapo from Oregon State. He's another guy.
Yep.
I want to say he came up for a visit, but I could be wrong about that. But I like him a lot for a 3rd-day safety if he's the pick. He's out there. I think just in general, for me, I want to see them go with a couple offensive linemen on Saturday. I think they need that, add 3. We had said that going into, the whole pre-draft previews that we were doing, but I want to see 3 offensive linemen. They have 1.
Yeah.
I think they need a couple more. That's a position. Cornerback would be 1, and then you really could add anybody, whether it's a D lineman or an edge rush or somebody to the front would be great too. And then other than that, kind of whatever you want. But I'd like to see him go heavy on offensive line on Saturday, and then fill in here and there on the defense.
Well, if we're going heavy on the offensive line, one guy I want to call out, and we did talk about him on our prospect rundowns, Christian Mahogany from Boston College. So we got some insight on this guy. I guess that's redundant. I don't know why. We've got some insight on this guy because of Jeff Hafley. So he's either the guy or he's not. There's not a lot of question there about whether they would want him or not. I think he's an interesting one as far as the interior guys that are left. He's one of the top ones. He's got a nasty attitude. If you watch him when he's blocking out there, very Quentin Nelson-like attitude. I'm not saying Quentin Nelson-like abilities necessarily. I don't think he's nearly the athlete. But when he just looks, kind of like Edgerrin Cooper, he just looks mean. He looks like he's out there to like really rough someone up. Like, I'm going to push someone down. I'm going to hurt you on this play. And, it's one thing to think that that's what football's about. It's another thing to actually see that mentality on a play-in, play-out basis. And he is. He's like a little pit bull, man. I shouldn't say little. He's a pretty massive human. But anyway, so that's one. Christian Mahogany to keep an eye on. I think he'd be an interesting one sometime tomorrow. But there's still several folks out there. I believe. Let's see here. Anyway, we're not going to get too deep into all of this as far as like going down who's available, who's not. What position do you think we still need to address? You said O-line, but outside of that, is there anything else that you really want to see addressed tomorrow?
Yeah, so cornerback and edge rusher, or I'll kind of group edge rusher, D-line together, so whichever one. But that along with corner, I'm a little surprised they haven't picked a corner yet on the first 2 days, so definitely would like to see them at least take one there, and then one up front on defense, whether it's an edge rusher or defensive line, to go along with a couple offensive linemen. But yeah, that's what I'm hoping for. I would be shocked if they don't take at least one other offensive lineman in this draft. And I would think, just based on what it looked like they were doing pre-draft with some of the visits, that they're going to take a defensive lineman too as well.
Yeah, they did. They talked to a lot of defensive linemen. Those guys aren't there yet or anymore. I think the one from Northern Iowa, he's still out there, I think.
Yeah, Christian Boyd out there.
Christian Boyd.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The others, I believe, have come off the board.
Yeah, they went pretty quick. I know they had Mason Smith from LSU. He was a second-round guy. Michael Hall from Ohio State went in the second round too.
Yeah,
he visited. And I like Chris Jenkins a lot from Michigan. He went in the second round. There was like a round.
Yeah.
There's a run on those guys. There was a run on cornerbacks in the second round. So yeah.
Now, and as far as corners go, a good name to keep an eye on is Cam Hart, Notre Dame. There were some folks that were saying he's probably rated higher by GMs than by most media. He's one that looks solid. I mean, did well at Notre Dame. Could be a good one to come in, be a good special teams contributor, compete for that, nickel, maybe fourth cornerback role. Kyrie Jackson out of Oregon is one that I thought might be a little bit higher, but he has now made it to day 3. Interesting one there. But, yeah, so there's definitely some interesting names left on the board to pay attention to here. I'm very excited about day 4 or day 3. There's round 4. There's a lot of good things that Gute has done in this time. One prediction that I have admitted to being wrong about so far is the receiver group. Obviously, it's deep. There's been a lot of them taken. However, the Packers have not taken one, and specifically A.D. Mitchell. I thought if he was on the board, they would take him. But still a lot of very interesting names out there for the Packers at receiver. One that is kind of popular among Packers Twitter has been Javon Baker out of UCF. Now, Javon Baker was at Bama first and transferred because he was behind all those other Bama receivers. Had a nice career at UCF. Sounds like a good dude, right? You listen to him. There's a few interviews out there on YouTube of him, and sounds like a good character dude, says all the right things. He looks like a great receiver. He looks like just a very good Swiss Army knife type guy, and that is very much a Packers type receiver for sure. So let's see here. Any other receivers that really stand out that are still available? Tez Walker from North Carolina, he's a nice athlete. There's been some knocks on him as far as whether he's got the work ethic to do it at the next level or not. I'm not here to make those kinds of questions, but we're all looking at day 3 of the draft. So if their guys are still available, there's a reason why. Brendan Rice is an interesting one out of USC. The son of the GOAT, Jerry Rice, and that is not a term I sling around lightly.
He's a fumbler.
Well, maybe he is, but that's a fixable issue. Amon Green was a
fumbler. Oh, his dad
fumbler.
was a fumbler, I should say. His dad was a fumbler.
Man, shots fired, Tim. Goodness gracious.
I'll never forgive it.
No, Jerry Rice is the undisputed GOAT. I will not have this kind of blasphemy. But I think it's very intriguing. His son stepping into the NFL. Really interested to see how he does. He's got good size, 6'3", 215, decent athlete. Played at USC with Caleb Williams. Got my own opinions about Caleb Williams and whether he can get it done or not, but we're going to find out in Chicago. But yeah, so nonetheless, there are very interesting names still out there at all these different positions, really. Yeah. Even tight end, there's a couple of really interesting names still out there.
Theo Johnson.
Yeah, Theo Johnson's one to keep an eye on. Big dude, great athlete. So,
yeah, I mean, there's names, and they've been pretty successful on day 3. So watch them. They don't pick until the 26th pick in the 4th round. I wonder if they're going to take some of these other later round picks and package them and make some moves. I think it makes sense to me. Like, I don't know how many, 6th and 7th round picks you really need in this draft, or just total picks you need in this draft. I think it's time to start targeting some guys. So it'll be interesting. Maybe they make some moves in the 4th round. They get on the clock before pick 126, which is where they're slated to pick on Saturday.
Yeah. Well, before we get to that, let's react to the other 2 picks that we haven't really talked as much about. Marshawn Lloyd, speaking of USC, we're just talking about Brendan Rice. Daniel Jeremiah, you said, had Marshawn Lloyd as his top running back in this class, right?
Yeah, he said
interesting.
He said after he was picked, he was the best running back in the class.
Okay.
Which is, surprising. Well, I didn't see anybody else that thought he was the top back. I mean, a lot of people thought he was maybe among the top 4 or 5 guys, but nobody that said he was the best back in the class.
Yeah, and I hadn't watched a whole lot of Marshawn Lloyd film, so I can't, make a big statement about it, but not surprised, right? Guy looks like a good athlete, looks like he looks the part, and produced at USC. I like it. I like the pick. I think I did expect them to come get one of these running backs in this class wherever they had to do it. So I like the pick. I think it's interesting that they didn't go with like a faster guy like a Jalen Wright who was on the board. Was surprised by that because Marshawn Lloyd is kind of like Josh Jacobs as far as size goes. He's a little bit bigger. He's around 220. So he's not going to be your home run hitting speed guy. Not that he'll be slow, but when you watch Jalen Wright get to the next level, it's just a different level of speed. So I like the pick. I'm not mad about it. I think it's great. Develop the guy. He seems like a guy who can be RB1 at some point, or a very nice complimentary RB2. So love it. I mean, what do you think about it?
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, it's got an interesting build size-wise. He's a little bit under 5'9", but he's 220 pounds. So, yeah,
he's thick.
He's thick. Usually you see the shorter guys, they're more of a smaller, like scat back, speed back kind of thing. And he's got size to him. So, yeah, he's not one that we talked about a lot. He's, not one that I know as well as, Trey Benson or Jonathan Brooks or Wright from Tennessee, some of those guys that we've talked about, but he's got some good tape. The one concern is he's been banged up at times with some injuries, but he's been productive. They kind of underutilized him at USC. He didn't have a ton of carries, which is good because there's not a whole lot of tread on the tires coming in. But yeah, from what I've just been able to see tonight, the people that like him really like him.
Yeah,
and to me, it's AJ Dillon. Like, his job's on the line. Like, I mean, I thought it was anyway, but now you're taking this kid in the 3rd round, and just like his pedigree and his background, what he could be. I mean, if he comes into training camp and he kind of, is ready to go more or less, like he doesn't need that kind of red shirt year. AJ Dillon may not make the team. This kid might take his job right away, because there's the potential here that they found somebody in the third round who can eventually be like a 1B kind of back to Jacobs. And it might not take him very long to do that, which is awesome. Maybe he needs a year. Maybe he's not ready to go and adjust to the NFL. And, he's got to settle in as a third back. And, we don't.
Even then, that's fine.
Yeah, we might not see him a whole lot in 2024, which is fine.
Yeah.
But I think there's also the potential there. But, he's a number 2 back starting in September. But, yeah, that was an interesting pick. It was a little bit of a surprise, but when you go back and look at it and start researching it a little bit, I don't think it's as much as much of a surprise as maybe it should have been. Going into the process.
Well, we'll get to look at it. We'll dive in. We'll take a closer look at his tape. But Jason says that it's pretty impressive. So I hope you're right, Jason. Obviously, now that he's a Packer, we want this guy to be as impressive as possible. But yeah, I like the pick. I don't have anything negative to say about it. And kind of the theme of the day is in Gute we trust. So if this is the guy, and there were other guys on the board. Like we said, Jalen Wright. A lot of people think that he was the best back in this draft. And one thing we did talk about on the show is the best back in this draft is really going to be determined by each GM and what they value.
Yes.
And so we saw that play out here. And Jonathan Brooks was the first one that came off. Jalen Wright's still available, which is I would call that unpredictable. I don't think I saw that coming. I didn't see a whole lot of mock drafts predicting that. But yeah, I mean, overall, this is kind of what I had hoped they would do with the running back position. Whoever they thought was the right fit for it, I'd hoped they'd pick up a day 2 guy who is really supposed to take over probably in a few years, or at the very least be the second fiddle to Josh Jacobs for the foreseeable future. So
yeah, and it fits in. He's 220 pounds. Jacobs is over 220, and we know AJ Dillon's what, 240, 245.
Closer
they
to
like
50.
They like their big backs. I know Aaron Jones wasn't that. But he's been kind of the outlier. Like they like big backs in Green Bay.
Well, and that's where I thought, all right, you got 2 pretty big backs already. Maybe you go off and get the guy that can run a home run for you out of nowhere.
I agree.
Who knows what they'll do tomorrow? Gute said bring on the competition. Maybe they'll go off and get Isaac Garrindo tomorrow. That would fit the mold. He's another 225-pounder, but he's running a 4.33 340, which is significantly faster than what the other guys are running.
Yeah, and I like that you brought up competition because, we haven't even brought that up. Like, they've increased the competition all over. Offensive line.
Big time.
Yeah, offensive line, running back. I think Bullard, he's got competition, but he's going to be a day 1 starter. Part of that's just there's not a second safety right now on the roster that I think is going to compete with him enough. And then linebacker. To take a second-round linebacker and follow it up with a third-round linebacker to go with Quay Walker, like, there's a lot of competition now.
A lot of competition.
Building the
absolutely.
depth.
And on special teams, too. We talked about that a little bit beforehand, but, these guys coming in, they've got to contribute on special teams, and I guarantee that's factoring in to some of these decisions, especially now. But, hey, shout out to Jensen. Go Pack Go. Appreciate you. Thanks for the comment. Spike that like button for us. Give us a follow, subscribe, all the good stuff. But yeah, so then as we're talking about him, let's see here. Tyron Hopper out of Missouri. I think it was very interesting. We called this out when it happened that Gute and team chose to go to Missouri's Pro Day instead of Michigan's Pro Day, as they were on the same day. And now you have a Tiger chosen before a Wolverine. So see these little actions. Sometimes they add up. They'll tip you off on what might happen.
Yeah.
Don't know much about Tyron Hopper though. Do you have any thoughts about him?
Yeah, he was a 30 visit too up to Green Bay.
Yep.
And I believe he was the Senior Bowl too. As was Jordan Morgan.
Yep.
As No, Cooper, I don't think was. Cooper's under, but um, they like their Senior Bowl guys. Cooper was a 30 visit. Hopper was a 30 visit. So kind of some of the trends that they have there. They don't, so as Goody said, some of the 30 visits are medical reasons, and some of them they're just putting up smoke screens, but some of them really mean something. And obviously Hopper did, Cooper did. They have a pattern now over the last few years of liking a lot, drafting a lot of Senior Bowl guys.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I thought he was more of a third day pick, but whatever. You're picking him at 91. It's almost the third day too. I'm not
Right.
going to split hairs with that. Just interesting though that they would take Cooper in the second round, Hopper in the third round when you have Quay Walker. I know it's a 4-3 defense, but I don't think we're going to see three linebackers a ton. And you have Isaiah McDuffie, who they seem to kind of like a little bit.
Yeah.
But you go back to what Goody said earlier in the offseason that they need numbers at linebacker with the switch to the 4-3, let alone figuring out the starters. They need more guys.
Right.
So this is giving you depth. This is giving you competition. It's going to really push Isaiah McDuffie to be I think Isaiah McDuffie has a role in special teams, but this is going to push him to be a defensive linebacker, a guy who's going to see the field. And Hopper can probably he played special teams at Missouri, so he gives you that ability as well. And again, it gives you depth at that position. And if you want to look ahead, Quay Walker's going to his third year. They're going to have a decision to make at the end of the year whether to pick up his fifth year option. So you're kind of planning ahead.
Yeah.
And if maybe he's only a 4-year linebacker for them, it could be possible. So now you have Cooper, you have Hopper. So it might not be a 2024 guy, somebody that's going to help you in 2024 on defense, but it could be down the line. He could. That one, I think the Hopper pick is the one where I kind of go, that one's the most, I won't say hard to figure out because I get it, but that's a little bit where I can kind of debate it. Like, did they need another linebacker in the third round there? But if you look ahead to development and what could be happening down the line, it does make sense. And they did need depth. They did need competition there. It fits in with competition on the offensive line, competition in the secondary.
Yes.
At running back. So it fits in there. He's a good athlete too. Productive player at Missouri. So yeah, I like it. I question it somewhat, but I get what the Packers are probably seeing and forecasting with him at that position.
Yeah, I mean, and he's right in there. He's a 230-pound guy, 6'2". Yeah. They're all about the same size and seem to be similar abilities as well. So I think it's going to be very exciting to see who fits in with Hafley's defense and who doesn't, who thrives, who struggles. That's going to be very telling, and I think that'll prepare you really next offseason to say, okay, here's who didn't work out, unfortunately. Aaron Campman didn't work out back in, 2009. But, now that we know that, here's who's here, here's who we're going to build around, and now we can take our assets next year, 25, and fill those holes. But that's why I think that this Super Bowl window is wide open, because you're at this point now where you're just almost at capacity. You're like, well, I mean, how many bodies can you put in these rooms? Competition's great. But if you go off and draft another running back again, it's like, shoot, man. Who's out? So I don't know if they can bring in another linebacker, and certainly if they do, I think special teams has got to be a big part of that decision.
Yes.
But again, Carl Brooks, Dontavian Wicks, Rasheed Walker, Carrington Valentine, all those are names that came from day 3 in the last 2 years. So hang out. There's a lot left here with 8 picks in these next few rounds. That's a big number.
They're going to be busy.
The Bears have 4 picks in the entire draft. So if you can take 2 starters out of 8 day 3 picks, you're probably doing just as good as the Bears did in this draft.
Yeah, and I think the Vikings are kind of right along that I think they have a couple tomorrow too, and I think
Yeah.
already in 2025 they only have 3 picks, which is incredible that you could trade that many picks a year from now. But
Yeah.
that's another. We'll get to the Vikings and the Bears and the Lions and everything when we
Yeah.
review
We
everything.
we
But
don't have to bully them too much tonight. Jensen has
yeah,
a good question here though. I want to get to that. Any chance we draft a receiver on day 3? I'd actually say it's a very good chance. And we did talk a little bit about a few of them who are available. Javon Baker is one out of UCF that we talked about. I think that one is a very good chance to be a Packer. He's a very versatile guy. Seems like a very strong character guy. Makes a lot of good, he makes his catch radius is pretty impressive, and he makes impressive catches. He makes hard catches look easy, I think is the way to put it. But he's one to keep an eye on. But the list is long at receiver right now. There's some really strong names that are left on that board. So I would say that at some point tomorrow, I would not be surprised at all if they take a receiver. I'd probably be more surprised if they don't. Put it that way.
I think they could. I think you just it's part of the competition, and let's compete with. I think they have 4 guys on the roster for sure that are making the team at receiver. So whoever you bring in tomorrow's got to compete with Bo Melton, Malik Heath, Grant DeBose, those guys to make the team. So yeah, I
And
mean
there are guys who would. Javon
yeah,
Baker would.
and it's competition, and it's keeping the room kind of fresh and keeping the pipeline open for that room. Because they got a lot of guys that are young, which is great and developing, and hopefully going to take the next step. But if either one, they don't take the next step, or they do, a couple of years from now, you're not going to be able to keep them all. So
Right.
you want to keep that pipeline going. So yeah, I think they could take a receiver tomorrow. Wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, and there are, like I said, there's some names available. One name that's still available, and we can all speculate on why, and I'm sure he'll go pretty early tomorrow. But Troy Franklin out of Oregon is still available.
Skinny.
He's skinny. He's probably limited in what he's actually going to be good at, is with his skill set in the NFL. He's a speed guy. But very interesting, because there's a lot of people who had him very highly ranked in this receiver class, and he's still out there. So that's one to keep an eye on, just a value pick. I said early on I didn't think he was a Packers guy. Another one who's out there who's a very impressive receiver, but I just don't think he's a Packers guy because of his measurables, is Malik Washington. He's 5'8". That's a tough sell at the receiver position, with this room. If that guy had a chance to go compete for like receiver 3, receiver 4 in a room that needs a shifty guy like him, that'd be different. But the Packers don't need that. What they need is someone who's versatile, who, if Dobbs goes down, he can fill in there. If Reed goes down, he can fill in there. Watson goes down, it's a little bit different. His skill set is so freakishly rare, and his speed is crazy. But point being is, you want to find somebody who can fill in across the board. I see, Jensen, you bring up Jerry Rice's son, Brennan Rice. We did talk about him a little bit. He's an intriguing one. He's 6'3", 215. He's got the build. He's got the athleticism. I think his career at USC left a little bit to be desired, but it seems like that whole team just didn't jive. When you got a QB like Caleb Williams and you don't win bowl games, you don't win more games than they did, there was just something about that whole thing that just didn't work. So I think that the guys who are coming out of that squad are probably more talented than what their career showed at USC. That's just a thought.
Let's hope Marshawn Lloyd is one.
Certainly hope that for Marshawn Lloyd. But yeah, so and hello, Sam. What's up? Good evening to you, sir. We've been having some good stuff. Who did Melton go to? Melton went early on in the second round.
The Cardinals, yeah.
The Cardinals, yeah.
Yep,
Okay. No, but we're just kind of talking about a little bit of what we can expect tomorrow. One question that came up is about receivers tomorrow, and I do again think that would happen. Tim, is there anybody that I'm not bringing up from the receiver side that would be interesting? I mean, the list is pretty long. But
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty long. I think at this point, there might be some under the radar guys that they like that aren't even that we're thinking of. A Bill Melton kind of guy like that. But
right.
no, I think it's a possibility that they do draft another receiver, especially if it's best player available, if somebody that can help them on special teams, that kind of thing. Yeah, wouldn't surprise me. Wouldn't surprise me if they don't go that route either. But um, just to build depth, build competition, and keep that pipeline going, I think it's definitely a possibility for them to take one on Saturday.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I think that, and that's it's a position they haven't touched yet. And kind of
Hmm.
like the O line, it's good to have that pipeline of receivers like you were talking about. You always want to be backfilling that. That's why we want to see a few more O line picks tomorrow too. You just want to keep that bench loaded, because those positions injuries change things real quick. Um, but yeah, there's plenty to look out after, and so I want to take that opportunity to shout out to some small school guys. Wayne Ruby is a guy that we've been a big fan of out of Mount Union. He has crashed some records there, just absolutely destroyed them, and the guys who held those records before, and they were pretty good NFL receivers. So he's a guy that he could pop up out and get drafted and surprise some folks. Another one that you probably are more likely to hear first, Jalen Coker out of Holy Cross. He looks pretty dang good. I believe Steve Smith said that he might be the best route runner in the class. Pretty high praise from an expert there. But yeah, so there's a lot of names worth keeping an eye on. The Packers have been very good at identifying these guys. So if they take somebody, there's a good chance that that person is going to be receiver 5, and they believe that. So just keep that in mind. But as far as that goes, I mean, there's a lot of talent at running back left. If you can even fit any more bodies in the running back room. There's some talent at tight end left. That's one thing to keep an eye on. Jatavian Sanders was the second tight end for a lot of people in this class, and he's still up there. Theo Johnson's one we've talked about, incredible athlete, would be an interesting person to plug in there. So there's a lot of very interesting names left on the board. So you definitely tune in and enjoy tomorrow, Packers fans, because we actually get to enjoy this time. Pretty much the rest of the NFC North doesn't know what that's like.
Sure.
Sam had to work tonight, taking everything as we speak. Yeah, man, a lot of fun stuff to catch up on. Cooper and Bullard, Lloyd, and our other linebacker there. They 4 excellent picks in our opinion this evening. The defense certainly got better. I think your special teams got better. And to Jason's point, competition, man. One thing that I always heard from coaches as I was growing up is competition breeds success, and not a lot of players like hearing that. Some players would prefer not to hear that, but it's true. Competition definitely breeds success. So you throw some of these guys into these rooms here, and things are going to get better just because they're duking it out. So have a good evening there, Jason. Appreciate you for joining us this evening. We're probably not going much longer here on the Packers Weekly Podcast Special Edition. But do you have any final thoughts about our picks so far here, Tim?
No, just I'm happy with them. I think they fit the Packer mold. They fit a lot of the thresholds that they look for. They're Packer type picks, athletes. They're going to bring competition to the rooms that they're joining, and for the most part, they're filling holes that this roster had. So
Yeah,
it makes sense. They're Packer kind of guys, and I like that Gute let the board kind of come to him. And I know a lot of people were wanting to trade up in the first round or that first pick in the second round, and I'm glad that he stayed patient and just let it fall to him. Picked up a couple extra picks at the first pick.
yep.
And the players he got, there's a ton of upside with those guys, and I think they can help them in 2024 and certainly going forward past 2024 into the future. So, yeah, these are Packer guys, really good athletes, and a lot of versatility too. That's the other thing too. And I think that's kind of a theme, is the versatility of what they've done in the first 2 days.
Yeah, I can't agree more, man. They've been somewhat predictable as far as who they're taking, and the sort of the lead up to the draft, and they are guys who came in their 30 visits. They are guys who are at the Senior Bowl. They are these sort of predictable type guys. One thing that I think is kind of fun, if I can say that as a Packers fan, is that they are filling needs. And a lot of times we've seen it's like, hey, we need something, and then they go totally the other direction. It's like, oh yeah, well, we don't need this, so we're gonna pick that guy. And so I haven't seen that in this draft, and I think sometimes that's just how it works out. But I think it's fun to see holes being filled left and right, and then really that leaves not only tomorrow, but your undrafted free agents and probably the second wave of free agency that happens wide open to put the best bodies where you can, right? Like just improve where you can if you need to, and otherwise, I'll keep saying it. I think the Packers Super Bowl window is wide freaking open. You've got these guys, so many of them are under rookie contracts. You got a lot of talented guys that seem to enjoy playing with each other and for each other, and that's a rare thing to capture, I think, at any level of football. So I'm very, very excited about what's developing right now. Let's address a little bit of this. So Sam asked, what time do we think we'll be on tomorrow? That's a little bit unpredictable, tomorrow being Saturday. We are going to try to tune in and make some final comments on what's going on tomorrow, because with 8 picks, there's plenty to talk about, for crying out loud. Probably some movements. So it's just TBD, man. Keep an eye out. I guess the best thing I can say is, hit the follow button with the notifications, and when we go live, there should be a notification you get. But we're gonna try to do it. I don't know. The draft, I think, starts at noon tomorrow. Is that true?
Yeah, noon Eastern.
Noon. I don't know.
We'll definitely be on Monday for our
We'll definitely be
regular
on Monday.
show.
I don't know that we'll wait till the end to do that tomorrow. We might jump in right there in the middle. We'll kind of play it by ear just to see kind of what's going on. There might be some fun stuff to get into before it's over. But we definitely appreciate y'all wanting to join us tomorrow. We're going to try to make it as easy as possible for you. So appreciate you for asking there, Sam. And then real quick from Clint, any thoughts on quarterback? Oh, I got the wrong one there. Any thoughts on quarterback? Yeah, I mean, they got a lot of ammunition right now, and one thing that's funny is Gute, he in a world of smoke screens and sort of lies and deception, he's kind of dropped some real Easter eggs for us and some real tips on stuff that he would do. I mean, even down to saying I'd like to get 13 or 14 picks. Well, he's got 13 picks now, so check that box. This guy does what he says, and he did talk about drafting a quarterback, so I would not take that off the table at all. And there's some decent ones. One that I would keep an eye on, he just caught my eye early on when we were watching film on some of these different receivers and different offensive linemen. Wasn't really looking for the quarterback position, but Caden Slovis, Caden out of BYU. I mean, I wasn't even looking, but watching the film for the receivers and the O-line there, what I kept seeing from him was like, dang, this guy's just putting darts where he wants them. It was just very consistent. Like, oof, he's just zipping them in there. So that's one to keep an eye on. I think he would he might give our boy Clifford a run for his money in camp. But, I mean, Sean Clifford, in my opinion, he's got that QB2 position locked down. I don't know if that's up for grabs. But
yeah, I mean, I know Gute mentioned he wants to start getting back to drafting quarterbacks again and having that competition. So we'll see. I think it's definitely, with all the picks they have tomorrow, it's definitely a possibility they take another quarterback, compete with Clifford, but at least they're going to be signing a guy in undrafted free agency after the draft on Saturday if they don't take one within the 7 rounds. But yeah, it's they have a lot of picks, so it wouldn't surprise me at all if there's a quarterback tomorrow.
Yeah, not at all. Not at all. So, I keep saying it. Strap in, y'all. Tomorrow is almost as important as these last 2 days. I know the first, second, and third rounds get a lot of fanfare, but seriously, especially with Gute at the helm, rounds 4 through 7 are going to be just as impactful, just as important, and probably just as much fun with 8 stinking picks. We just got to see what's going to happen. But appreciate all the support in the comments section. Really appreciate y'all. Love the engagement. Love going back and forth with you, and the kind words about the content. We're gonna keep it coming. We're here every Monday at 9:30 p.m. all the way through the off season and right on into training camp and every week during the season. So. As long as y'all keep coming back, we're going to keep being here, and a few of these times in between, because this is kind of a special episode here, doing some draft reactions, and it is getting late for our guy Tim here out on the East Coast, man. He's into tomorrow already.
Yep.
So we're going to start wrapping this up, but really, really appreciate you guys joining us this evening, and definitely hope that you'll come back to hang with us tomorrow when we jump in. Come back on Monday when we get back to our regular schedule. We'll do a full dive through the draft, full reactions. Love getting y'all's thoughts. Some of y'all have some information we haven't heard yet, so bring all of it, and come back to hang out with us again on the Packers Weekly Podcast, part of PackersTalk.com network. But check us out on YouTube. Check us out on Twix. That's what I'm running with now. We're not calling it Twitter anymore. We're not calling it X. It's Twix. Facebook, Instagram. Spike that like button for us, y'all, and definitely subscribe to the Packers Talk YouTube channel. All those things are very, very helpful to us. We will see y'all tomorrow, Packers fans, and go Pack Go.